is Greta, and I am a PhD candidate in the Department of Sustainability at the Institute of Management at Scuola Superiore Sant'Anna. This course will be held by me and my colleague Tiziana, who is also a PhD student in the same institute. We will be introducing you to the concept of biomimicry and showing you the strong interconnections between the natural world and the anthropic one. So let's begin our journey. It was 1997 when Janine Benyus came out with the book Biomimicry, Innovation Inspired by Nature. While she did not invent the term, her book certainly gave the word widespread recognition. But what does biomimicry mean? Biomimicry, or biomimetics, as defined by Otto Smith in the 50s, refers to the art of looking to nature for inspiration for new inventions. Nonetheless, I'd prefer to use another definition, which is innovation inspired by the technology of biology. I like it better because it reminds me what I love about biology. For those of us who have been lucky enough to study the inner processes allowing a flower to bloom, the principles that govern its evolution, and the complex physiology of living organisms, there is nothing, really nothing more amazing than the technology behind how nature works. And if you think about it for a second, it is so obvious. Our functioning and the functioning of the entire world around us has been shaped by 3.8 billion years of evolutionary processes and life's intelligence. Can't you see the magic that there is in it? Life's intelligence has been able to create over years and years a wide variety of products, solutions, processes, interactions that are well adapted to the complexity of the world itself and designed to last over the long run. For this reason, nature is considered by Janine Benyus as the greatest mentor, measure, and model we can all learn from. It is a mentor because of its wisdom developed over a billion years. It's a model because we can emulate it, and it's a measure because it sets the standards for the sustainability of our actions. No wonder then if throughout human history we have taken inspiration from nature to solve our problems. Engineers and designers do it all the time. They take the ideas from others and make them better. So, even if today nature-inspired solutions are gaining a huge crowd of followers, biomimicry has a very long history. Very much before the term biomimetic or biomimicry were even coined, humans used to observe nature and mimicking its solutions in their everyday life. Do you know this man? Maybe you know him better for his famous portrait, the Gioconda. But Leonardo da Vinci wasn't just a painter. He has been one of the greatest inventors of humankind. And he had a dream, or better, he probably had tons of dreams, but among them, he really wanted to learn how to fly. Try to guess what Leonardo da Vinci took inspiration from his flying machine from. He was a keen observer of the anatomy and flight of birds, as the Wright brothers after him, and he made various notes on his observations. I can tell whether we would have been able to fly from Rome to New York in 8 hours today if birds had never existed. But still, I'm pretty sure that their beautiful air acrobatics up to the sky tickled Leonardo's imagination and creativity. And he hasn't been the only one. Our history has plenty of examples of our ingenious ability to copy his nature's idea. Starting from the theft of biologically produced materials such as silk that has helped to build up the fortune of the Chinese Empire, ending off with the strategy of the studio formation by ancient Romans. Nowadays, the most popular case of biomimicry is probably Velcro. Incredible, isn't it? The amazing invention that made our lives as children so much easier comes from a nice trekking into the Alps during a sunny Sunday morning. By looking at the burrs that stuck on his clothes and on his dog's fur During a walk into the wood, George the Mestral noticed a lot of tiny hooks distributed on the surface of those little seeds. And that's it. As easy as that, he invented two surfaces, one covered in tiny hooks, the other one covered in tiny loops that stick to each other very, very easily. Biomimicry is a very multidisciplinary science. It can be applied to almost every sector of the knowledge, as you can see from the graph that describes the percentage of published papers on biomimicry and nature-inspired solutions from 1997 until today in numerous different fields. The fields where biomimicry is applied vary from energy to agriculture, from fashion to architecture and engineering, from medicine to new biomaterials, from robotics to business administration, and so on. And if you want to have a taste of what I mean, I warmly suggest you to have a look at asknature.org. Asknature.org is a free and open access tool developed by the Biomimicry Institute with the ambitious aim to collect and systemize the knowledge that is actually available on biological solutions applicable to human design challenges. In the website you can find, on one hand, innovation that has been developed based on natural observation, and on the other, ready-to-go answers and solutions to many problems of our times, obviously found out in the technology of biology. In order to master nature's knowledge, we need to focus on the function and the purpose behind the biological strategies performed by an organism in order to enhance its chances to survive. Let's pretend to be a little kid and ask yourself, why does it happen? What's the reason? We may want to focus on a specific characteristic such as the form of an organism and its organs, or we could study a certain mechanism or behavior or again a process. For example, who wouldn't like to walk on walls as Spider-Man does? Some animals can easily do it. I'm talking about geckos. As Professor Rinaldi has explained in a report of European Molecular Biology Organization, the ability of a gecko to stick on surfaces and climb walls is due to the incredible and composite structure of his feet. Each foot is covered by a keratinous bristles called seta, that in turn branch off in tons of small flat tips called spatulas, that achieve the cohesion with the surface thanks to weak electrostatic forces that are being established during the contact. This ability hasn't gone unnoticed by engineers and designers who have studied geckos' anatomy to create new advanced super adhesive materials and search for application in biorobotics. Nowadays, in this so-called Anthropocene, a new geological era when human beings seem to have taken control over the planet and have been changing it chemically, physically and ecologically at an exponential rate, we desperately need to look at nature with new eyes. We have to remember that we depend on the functioning of ecosystems to survive, and we need to learn to live gracefully and mindfully within the planetary boundaries. Searching for recurring patterns in the biological world, the Biomimicry Institute has figured out the basic principles that create conditions to living beings' survival and thriving under the pressure of evolution's drivers. These principles are illustrated in the wheel drawn by Biomimicry 3.8 consultancy and focus on the ability to adapt to changing conditions, to be attuned and responsive, to use chemicals that don't hurt and pollute, to be resource efficient, and to integrate development with growth. These principles can be applied to a wide range of human activities, both practically and theoretically. We'll see now the implication of the study and application of biological principles in research activities with another researcher, Donato Romano. He is specialized in biomimicry and bio-inspired robotics, and he will be telling us something more about his work. So please, Donato, let us know something about what you're working on right now.
Biomimetics is a field of engineering that aims at studying interesting phenomena and processes in biological models in order to develop artificial systems that reproduce these interesting strategies that animals and other organisms evolved during billions of years. Among the context of biomimetics, there is the animal-robot interaction. Animal-robot interaction, and in general organism-robot interaction, is an emergent field of bioengineering that try to establish biohybrid systems, swarm of organisms, where each node of these systems include living organisms and artificial agents. These systems have huge possibilities and application in the real world. For instance, investigating biological processes or animal behavior, animal cognition, or environmental monitoring, or investigating biomedical issues by studying animal models. We believe that this new field of science and technology will have a crucial role in providing a new approach in environmental management in order to preserve ecosystem and protect human health.
Thank you, Donato, so much. It has been so interesting. So, what about when it comes to apply the biological principles to business? If we take a further look to the patterns of nature and the patterns usually shown in business, we might find several overlaps, and we might presume that what works on one hand works also on the other. Following the similarity between a firm and an intelligent living being, Professor Cattori, a strong supporter of the organicism in business, argues that a company is a complex structure that is more than the simple sum of its different parts. The interaction established between its departments gives to the whole system properties that single parts don't own. At the same time, a company can't be extracted from the context it belongs to, because its functioning is strictly dependent on their relationship and interconnection established with the other living beings in an intricate network of energy, resources and information flows that takes place in the economic environment. Now I leave the floor to Tiziana, who will be explaining you something more about the similarities between natural and industrial ecosystems.
As Greta was explaining, the existence of an ecosystem is conditioned by a flow of energy capable of counteracting the increase in entropy and consequently maintaining the organizational level stable and optimal. As happens within natural ecosystems, flows of energy, materials and resources can also be observed in industrial systems. However, business systems have not always taken inspiration from nature. During the period of the great industrial revolutions, in fact, between 18th and 19th century, innovations such as Fordism and Taylorism allowed man and the economy to develop rapidly, bringing economic well-being and growth. However, this production system brought with it numerous limitations, as well as an enormous amount of pollution, use of raw material, and waste production. This model of production and consumption, perpetuated over the years, is also known as the linear economy or take, make, dispose model. This model of economic growth has characterized the last 150 years and can be defined as an industrial market economy based on the extraction of new raw materials, on mass consumption, and on the production of waste, once the end of life of the product is reached. Over the time, however, the unsustainability of this production and consumption model has become increasingly evident. Issues such as climate change, greenhouse gas emission, and uncontrolled pollution have rapidly risen since the 90s, becoming today a familiar reality of each of us. We have increasingly realized that to ensure the well-being of future generations, it's necessary to rethink our production and consumption model, both in those countries that have already experienced important industrial development and for the developing countries that are now heading toward this road. To grow and develop, we need new models, new aspiration, and what can be better than nature itself? At the overwhelming emergence of the environmental problem, scholars from all over the world question themselves about new growth paradigms, finally giving life to the circular economy model. The linear system is increasingly opposing the emerging model of the circular economy, which represents a new way of designing, producing, and using things, producing positive impacts for society and respecting the limits of our planet. Circular transition requires the transformation of each of the phases of the linear system. We need to review how we manage resources, manufacture and use products, and treat materials and the end of the cycle. One of the key elements of circular economy is systemic thinking. It plays the dual role. On one hand, it provides the conceptual framework and the key to understand the economy as part of a larger system. On the other hand, it represents a useful tool to trace the roots of problems and identify solutions by evaluating in advance the network of cascading impacts and identifying new opportunities. In the systemic vision of circular thinking, the economy is a system within other systems inserting in a society and in the biosphere. The goal is to protect and to develop capital in its various forms, not only economic and financial, but also social and natural. Even in this theorization, nature comes to our aid. In fact, the boundaries of ecosystem are actually simplification. These boundaries are rarely natural because each environment is in connection with the ecosystem that surrounds it. Every system has one or more boundaries and may be separated into components or subsystems. Every system is also contained within multiple higher-level supersystems. These features are found across multiple system types and levels. For example, the marine ecosystem is connected in a highly dynamic way to the ecosystem of the rivers that feed it and to the coast through the reciprocal passage of materials, energy, and living organisms. The analogy with living system is a recurring theme also in the thinking of Michael Brunger and William McDonough, creators of the cradle-to-cradle model, which represents one of the fundamental pillars of the circular economy. According to this approach, our behavior should be inspired by that of nature. We should try to maintain the circularity of flows of materials. As happens within an ecosystem, industrial systems should therefore also be characterized by a small amount of matter that enters and leaves the closed-loop system, in which the waste of one can become a precious input for another. Connections, closed cycles, interdependence, collaborations, these are the keywords that nature and biomimicry teach us, and they are also the watchwords for a more sustainable future. But how can we translate all this into our industrial system? Among the principles that are linked to the circular economy, since the beginning of the spread of this concept, the so-called 3R have played a prominent role. The first R stands for reduction, reduction of the consumption of resources, reduction of the production of waste, and of the generation of emissions in the process of production, distribution, and consumption. The second R stands for reuse of waste and products, and the third, recycling in order to use it as a secondary raw material. However, the 3R model has evolved, leading us to the awareness that this approach cannot be limited to products alone, but extends to the entire process, business model, relationship between the players that make up an industrial ecosystem, including consumers. All this not only translates into targeted actions to design and create better products, but by rethinking the concept of the system, it offers us the opportunity to reorganize entire supply chains. Nature, as industrial production, is in fact full of relationships, communities and alliances that only work when all parties work together. This leads us to the concept of symbiosis, that is mutually beneficial relationships that are established between two or more organisms, contributing to the perfect functioning of natural ecosystem. Industrial symbiosis is a form of intermediation to facilitate innovative collaboration between companies, so that the waste produced by one of them is valued as a raw material for another. The word symbiosis is usually associated with relationships that exist in nature, in which two or more species exchange materials, energy, or information in a mutually beneficial way. An example of symbiosis in nature is the plants and the fungi that live and thrive on them. In fact, the fungus receives the organic substances it needs from the roots, and the plant receives the water and mineral salts from the fungus. The application of the principle of industrial symbiosis to business practices allows companies to more effectively use material flows, energy, water, achieving greater overall productivity. One example is the famous Colombi Eco Park. This eco park, unlike others, was not designed in such a way as to become an industrial district. On the contrary, we could define its transformation as physiological. Starting from the 60s, the first network of exchanges of material and energy developed in this area. A network of a company initially maintained by the will of the owners themselves, who already at the time saw industrial symbiosis as a cornerstone of their activity. Initially, the symbiosis referred to the supply of water resources. With the passage of time and with the fortification of the connection, the first exchanges of materials and energy resources began. The philosophy of this model can be summarized through a simple concept, that is, working together is an intelligent business. Product redesign, supply chains, relationships, rethink the way we behave, produce and buy, reduction of impacts and use of raw materials, process optimization, sharing of information, materials and knowledge. Nature teaches us how to create resilient networks that can grow and thrive. What we're only now learning to understand and try to implement, nature has been perfecting for 3.8 billion years. Although the road is still long and paved with difficulties, nature offers us a source of inspiration to improve and return to re-establish with it that primordial connection that we have always had and that we too often forget. Biomimicry promises to be the solution for some of the worst global challenges, as climate change, plastic pollution and waste management, but simply peeking out the window and using a bit of imagination. In a glance, is the way of seeking sustainable solutions by borrowing nature's smartest ideas.